Hey guys, so we are about to get started with chapter 9, respiration. Okay, so cellular respiration, how we're going to be taking the foods and stuff that we eat and making it into the energy needed to, do that thing called living. So basically, the energy needs of life. So we went over before spring break the difference between endergonic and exergonic. Okay, endergonic, the energy is going in. Okay, exergonic, we are releasing or getting rid of energy. So we are endergonic systems. We constantly have to take in energy so that way we can perform basic functions like living. Okay, so what do we need for energy, or how do we make that energy and then use it? We can build our own biomolecules. Okay, we reproduce, we move, we have to actively transport molecules to send messengers throughout our body, and then to regulate our temperature. Okay, in our bodies, we're at 98.6. We got to make sure we can maintain that homeostasis, or else, RIP. So, hopefully you realize that there are more than just these examples here, because our bodies are very magical things and we do lots and lots of other stuff. So where do we get the energy from? This is kind of a review breakdown of what we went over before spring break. Okay, so we have to couple energy with different chemical reactions in order to actually break down the energy. So we have to use exergonic or catabolic reactions to fuel our endergonic or anabolic reactions. Okay. Oh, go back. Okay. So if we look here for digestion, we are taking in that more complex molecule, okay, and then we have to actually break it down into the simpler molecules that we would need. When we do that, we're also releasing the energy that was built in this bond between the more complex molecules. Now we take that energy and we use it to synthesize our complex molecules. Okay, so this is our exergonic or our catabolic reaction. We are breaking down the more complex into simpler and also releasing the energy that was built. Then from there, we can synthesize new molecules through anabolic reactions. So we take simpler ones, add in some energy, and boom, we have our more complex molecule. So to fuel the body's economy, so we have to eat high energy organic molecules, okay? So that's our food. So our carbohydrates, our lipids, our proteins, our nucleic acids, okay? Then we have to, after eating them, break them down. We have to actually go through catabolic reactions to digest them. And from there, we take that released energy in a form that the cell can actually use to perform different functions. Now, in order to do this, if you think about it, all of us in life, we use money on a regular basis, okay? We all have this common form of currency or money that we all understand. Well, in our bodies, we have all these different types of cells, but we need to have a common currency or a common type of energy that all parts of the body can understand. We have to have a way for this energy to be able to pass and move around throughout our entire system. So we need a short-term energy storage molecule. Now, that molecule is going to be ATP. You have heard me mention it many times before, and now you are going to realize that ATP is your best friend, and you are going to know every single thing there is to know about ATP. How fun. So, ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so remember when we were going over our nucleic acids, we said the examples are DNA and RNA. Well, ATP can be considered as one. Okay, because remember our nitrogenous bases, adenine was one of them. So adenosine, okay. Triphosphate, that just means tri is 3, and then phosphates. So it's an adenine molecule with 3 phosphate groups. So you can have different types of this nucleotide. Okay, so you can have an adenine with the ribose sugar plus your phosphate. The I just stands for initial. Okay, so how many you have of that? So we can have AMP. So adenine monophosphate plus a phosphate gives you ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate. Then adenosine diphosphate plus a phosphate gives you adenosine triphosphate. Oh my gosh, you're adding a phosphate. Math, awesome. So this is an anabolic reaction, okay? We are taking our simple ones, our simple molecules, so adenine, ribose, phosphate. Let's combine all of those with the use of energy and create adenosine monophosphate. Then we have AMP plus another phosphate to give us ADP. Then ADP plus another phosphate to give us ATP. Now, how does ATP actually store the energy? So the way it stores the energy is through the phosphate groups, okay? So with our phosphate groups, they are very, very negative, okay? Phosphorus and oxygen are all very electronegative. So because of that, it's more difficult to add phosphate groups because there's so much freaking energy in those bonds between each phosphate group. So most of the energy, though, is stored in the third phosphate. So for adenosine triphosphate, that's where we have the most amount of energy because of that third phosphate group. That's why ATP, not ADP or AMP, but ATP is the one that we use in our bodies and in our cells for all of the energy. So because they're so negative, it's a very unstable bond between all of our phosphate groups. Okay, so they're kind of spring-loaded. It's like they're basically waiting to kind of just burst and break apart and release all of that energy. So this is kind of an example of how we're going to kind of break all of that energy and release it. So if you see, we have our adenine, our ribose, and then here are our three phosphates. Well, what's going to happen is we're going to release a phosphate group. Once we release a phosphate group, that means we've broken a bond, which means now, guess what? We have energy free flowing. So we take this energy and use it to fuel other reactions. Okay, this is the amount of free energy that is released. Remember from our lecture before spring break, we talked about the difference between negative and positive free energy. If y'all need kind of a refresher, you can go back to that lecture. It's also posted. Now, enzyme that phosphorylates. Remember, an enzyme is something that helps speed up our chemical reaction. One that phosphorylates, meaning breaks apart the phosphate, is called a kinase. Okay, so our kinases are going to be extremely helpful in these chemical reactions. Okay, so when we release that phosphate group from ATP to give us ADP, because now we only have two phosphates, we're going to get also 7.3 kilocal per moles amount of energy. Okay, so that's the amount of free energy that we will have in addition to that phosphate group. So the ATP-ADP cycle. What this means is that we cannot store ATP. There's not a place in our bodies where we can actually just kind of, hey, let's just stick it in this closet and use it when we need it. So it's way too reactive because it has those electronegative groups of phosphate. Now it transfers the phosphate way too easily because it kind of, there's just so much there. It's just ready to explode. It just wants to kind of get rid of it. So that's why it is only short-term energy storage, okay? It's short-term because we can store it for a short amount of time, but then eventually, like, it's going to have to blow and we have to use all of that energy. So we have ATP here. And here we get ADP by breaking down, okay? So we have a kinase enzyme that helps us phosphorylate ATP to get rid of that phosphate and release energy as well. That energy is used for the work that the cell needs to perform, okay? Now, the way that we get more energy or more ATP to continue to go through this cycle is through cellular respiration. So if you think about your muscles, okay, those of us that constantly like work out or play sports or whatever, our muscle recycles over 10 million ATPs per second. Okay, so a working muscle, if you are actively running or moving or doing some sort of extraneous activity, you are recycling over 10 million ATPs per second. That is a lot of energy. That is why if you run or work out a lot, you need to take in a lot of glucose and oxygen. You have to take in a lot of glucose and oxygen, so that way you can, replenish your ATP and actually build your muscles back up. So let's do our question real quick. ATP serves as a common energy source for organisms because A, it is the smallest energy molecule. B, it stores the least energy of any energy source. C, its energy can be easily transferred to do cellular work. D, it is extremely stable and can be stored in the cell. E, traces of it have been found in fossils of ancient. I'm not even going to finish that because if you choose E, I don't know what's wrong with you, because we haven't even mentioned fossils and the beginning of life on Earth right now. So, LOL. Now, your choices automatically should be A, B, C, or D. So take a second, think about it. Okay, so like I said, you should have gotten rid of E. You should have gotten rid of D because it's saying it's extremely stable, but we already realized that ATP is unstable, okay, and it cannot be stored for long periods of time. It's short-term energy storage, okay? So now we're looking at A, B, and C. Did I say that it's the smallest energy molecule possible? No, that's way too specific. Okay, so now we're down to B and C. Your correct answer should be C because the energy can be easily transferred to do cellular work. That's why our cells use and make ATP is because, hey, why are we going to make something harder for us? Just easily transfer it to do all of the work that we need it to take care of. Okay? Now, if you had any questions or confusion with this question, please either text me through Remind or message me here on the hub or email me, okay, so that way I can kind of explain everything to you guys to make sure you understand this in full. Now, where's our energy stored, okay, and how can we get that energy from storage? So energy is stored in organic molecules. So our organic molecules are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Okay, we have to burn the fuels in a series of step-by-step enzyme-controlled reactions. So we take in all of this food, okay, so carbohydrates, fats, and our proteins. We do not eat nucleic acids, okay, that's our DNA and RNA. So if you're questioning why that's not in here, if you are eating solely DNA and RNA, that's kind of weird. Okay, so carbohydrates, fats, proteins, that's where we get our main sources of energy. We go through different enzyme controlled reactions to help break those molecules down so that way we can get our energy from it. So before we get started here, I'm going to kind of end here. My screen recording only lets me record 15 minutes at a time. So I'm going to stop here, and then in the next video will be the recording for the process of cellular respiration. Okay, so go ahead and click on the next video for the rest of the lecture.